Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we try to figure out how to build and run a SaaS. I'm Benedikt.
And I'm Brian. Each week we'll give you an honest look into our lives as we work on our products and keep the lights on with consulting. Today is October the 16th, and I am feeling behind.
This is episode number 13, and I'm feeling productive.
All right. Good for you. What's got you feeling productive?
I actually made some progress on in-app messages, or actually not in-app messages, but like all the refactoring work that is before the new feature, pulling out stuff and reorganizing things. I realized that I made quite a mess in the past with all the message rendering, and now I'm trying to pull it apart and put it back together in a way that I can actually reuse parts of it.
Nice.
Turns out it's more challenging than I expected, but then again, there are a lot of moving parts.
More challenging than you expected, the pulling it apart and putting it back together again, or the...
Yeah, that part. By now there's so many features like in message rendering, just like the composing of the message from the raw input, that it's actually challenging to separate the stuff. Like there's obviously the normal message body, but then you can have tags with user properties in there. You have link tracking in there. There's the unsubscribe links in there. There's pre-headers. Like so many things that have to work together at the same time and in the correct order. For example, you can reference the message subject in the body, but that only works if you render the message subject beforehand, and like stuff like that. Yeah, it's more complicated than it looks from the outside.
As you're looking at it now, was it complex just inherently? Like it was always going to be that difficult to create email messages, or are there things that you would have thought about differently if you could start over and do it from scratch?
I realized that I made stuff too smart. Like some components had too much logic in them and were assuming too many things that made them like interconnected between each other much more than is healthy. So a lot of the stuff I did yesterday was just pulling these things apart and make each component as stupid as possible with as little inputs as possible. So it's easier to reuse them. And I think that's going to pay off eventually.
Cool, man.
How was your week?
It was a good week. I mean, I say I'm feeling behind. I do feel behind. But I had a pretty good week. Last Wednesday, I had a good, like, I don't know, hour and a half or so, voice Zoom call with the developer that I'm having build out the Slack prototype for my like remote work doesn't have to be lonely project. Still open to names if anybody out there has a good idea for a name. And that was good because I was able to kind of just get myself familiar with Slack's, like with the development workflow. Here's how you test a Slack application locally, and just what that whole workflow is like. Was able to make some changes to the application and see them go through to Slack, like changing basically the interface for how you would respond. And so that's feeling really good. I was kind of struggling it's questioning early on. What of this should I outsource and what should I not? Do I need to just like learn the rudimentary basics of Slack's API and spin up a Node application and learn that from the get-go? Or am I going to make a lot more progress by outsourcing the initial chunks of this prototype? And right now I feel like I definitely made the right choice. Because there's just so much of the boilerplate that's in place now that I don't have to learn, but I can start making changes to the actual user-facing piece of the prototype already. So that feels pretty good. I am definitely want to hold myself accountable and like really get myself basically like finalize this thing and start putting it in front of people so that it doesn't drag on. Like I'm already feeling like it's dragging on too long. Like these final bits. And so, I'm
What's missing at this point? Like, what's stopping you to just put it in front of people right now?
Yeah, good question. It's that there are a couple of like ways that the questions are displayed and that the results get displayed back to the manager that just look bad. And gosh, yeah, they really do. Like I'll send you a screenshot after we're here. It's not that they're unreadable. I mean, Slack enforces certain types of display. But it just doesn't look like summarized and clean, easy to skim and helpful. And so yeah, there are just a couple of tiny little things like that that I want to be fixed. And then on the functionality wise, there are like a couple of tests that I want us to get in place so that I can like basically guarantee that the reporting hierarchy is just absolutely airtight, so that an employee. Yeah, a manager will never be able to see the responses from an employee is not a direct report of, just like that element of it. I haven't like completely tested to feel 100% confident yet. So it is very, very close. I need to make it a priority to outline specifically those final things, and get them done, because otherwise it is actually quite close. I'm not sure if I've been wondering if you've been seeing them come through, but I put it in our Slow and Steady Slack workspace.
Oh, no, interesting. No,
okay.
I didn't.
Yeah. You wouldn't have. Unless like you got some, because you're the admin, if you got some notification that I created a new channel. I was just curious if you had seen.
No, nothing.
All right. Yeah. So I was testing it there to be sure. Okay. It can be installed,
nice.
Et cetera. So
yeah, feel free to like give it a proper run there. Like, make me your employee.
Yeah. All right. Totally. Well, so I need to get those final things outlined, because I am personally not going to have any time to work on it between now and next Tuesday. I've got a full book of client work today. I'm going to see Tool tonight.
Nice.
Very excited about that. And then super excited. My wife and I are leaving for a trip, just the two of us, leaving the kids with her sister and our brother-in-law. And we're going to Santa Fe, New Mexico, from tomorrow to Tuesday. So, anyway, that's my week.
That's nice. Interesting. Did you, I wanted to ask you that, did you see that new feature by Slack, this workflow builder for repeating tasks?
I have not seen that.
Of course, I come unprepared and I don't have the link ready to send over to you. But apparently they just launched some kind of workflow builder to basically create similar things like you're trying to do.
Cool. All right. I'll thanks, man. I've got the link now. I will dig into that. Is it the sort of thing that you suspect will either is it going to make the development easier, or to potentially make what I'm trying to build obsolete before it even gets out of the door?
I think more of the make it obsolete thing, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, you're still targeting a very specific use case and can probably add more value with like a nice UI and nice reporting. I don't think you'd be able to do stuff with this stuff like that with the workflow builder. But it looks like you can do stuff like send messages to people and collect answers and stuff like that.
Like on an automated.
Yeah, some basic automations. Basically, that's what it. That's my first understanding of it. To be honest, I didn't fully look into it, but it's interesting to see that now everyone's coming up with those workflow tools in some form. Yeah,
they're super helpful. And I think I wouldn't take it as discouragement to make it obsolete out of the gate. You also sent me this tool that somebody that's going to MicroConf Europe is working on. What was it called? Mind Tool or something?
Team Mood, I think.
Team Mood. Yeah. Yeah. So that, I mean, so Team Mood looks like it's doing something super similar, checks in on the well-being of your team, and then based on those response, graphs it, et cetera, et cetera. So that to me, like that feels like market validation that there's definitely, there are times when that might discouragement of, oh yeah, this is like literally our business, like pointless. There's this feels like, yeah, that's completely validation. And I think so the thing I'm trying to keep in mind is to find ways to add value and improve like the customer experience that is not absolutely ingrained in Slack. That's maybe my big concern and hesitation about like the route that I've chosen to go to prove, that like to get a prototype in front of people initially is I do not want it to be a Slack app. Like it's going to be a tool for teams to, keep an eye on their employees, and it happens to have a really clean, easy to use Slack interface. So, anyway, all right.
I think that's still a smart choice, because like it makes onboarding so much easier. Mm-hmm. Like you don't have to invite people. It's just like install it into your existing Slack app and have something going. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a smart way to build up on an existing platform for this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Hopefully that'll prove out.
Yeah.
What you wanted to dig in and talk about Shape Up, but is there anything else from your week that you wanted to chat about before we get into that book?
Yeah, like I said, I'm feeling productive, but like compared to last week, it's night and day.
So in what way?
Last week after our recording, it basically kept on the mountain of tasks. Just
okay.
Like it was horrible.
Yeah.
When we ended the recording on Wednesday last week, I was like looking in my calendar. I was like, interesting. There's nothing in my calendar except for the office hours that would stop me from just focusing the entire day on userless stuff. Mm-hmm. And 2 hours later, stuff started happening. There was a new support request, and in the morning, I woke up to, I think, 3 or 4 emails from consulting clients with urgent tasks. And I ended up like spending 1 hour on user list. And Friday was similar, like looked pretty good and innocent the day before. But in the morning, like my inbox was flooded with new tasks.
Yeah.
So just super annoying.
Right.
But this week, for some reason, it's much better. I had most of the day yesterday to work on stuff, and got some little stuff done today, and hopefully get more refactoring done tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then on Friday I leave for MicroConf Europe.
Cool.
It's also exciting.
So so you leave Friday for MicroConf Europe?
Yeah, MicroConf Europe is next week.
Okay. Which days?
Will be good.
Like how many days is it?
MicroConf itself is Monday and Tuesday, I think.
All right.
And then I'm flying back on Wednesday. So we should probably figure out how to record the next episode. But, we can do that afterwards.
Right. Yeah, we'll figure that out later. We may need to bump it. Hey, so speaking of, we didn't talk about this, but MicroConf US tickets are going on sale today in about 2 hours.
Yes.
Do you know yet if you are planning to attend?
I am going to buy a ticket.
Okay.
And then we'll see.
All right. All right.
So I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'll buy a ticket and then try to make it.
Okay.
Still have to discuss with the girlfriend.
Right. No.
Stuff like that.
Totally. So I'm really excited. But what do people usually do? Because there's growth, MicroConf growth, and then there's starter. So I mean, do you buy tickets to both? Do you buy tickets to one and then just hang around? Like, what do people do?
I haven't been to either growth or starter, so I don't really know.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But my plan is to just buy one for growth. And then just be there for the one, like, just for growth. I've heard from people that attended both, and it might be interesting, but I feel like 4 days of talks and conferencing might be a bit overwhelming.
Right.
So I keep just going to one.
Gotcha.
What are your thoughts? Like, do you want to go to growth or starter or?
Well, I mean, the way they describe it, where my product business is right now, I should go to starter. And so that's what I was planning on doing, and growth is on Monday and Tuesday. So I was thinking, well, what if I, arrive Tuesday morning, wouldn't be able to, attend the talks or anything, but would like be around or hanging afterwards or whatever. And then, Wednesday, Thursday, attend the starter track. So that's what I'm thinking.
Sounds like
that's what I'm thinking in a way.
Smart plan.
Cool.
From past experience with MicroConf Europe, it's better to arrive early than try to stay longer.
Yeah, totally.
Like, if you want to add a vacation, add it in front instead of adding it to the back.
Yeah.
Like I did that once, and it was like you can't really enjoy the vacation because like you're too pumped up from the conference with all the ideas and stuff, and basically want to go back into work.
Get going.
And then by the time you actually get back to work, like a week later, a lot of that has died off and a lot of insights already vanished.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So it's the worst thing you can do. Like if you plan to do vacation, add it in front and come relax before the conference and get hyped up by talks and meeting people.
That's good advice. Cool. Well, do you want to talk about, looks like you've got a lot of notes in here about Shape Up.
Yeah, I finished the book earlier today, to be honest.
All right.
And I added some notes here and there while reading it. I'm not entirely sure how do we start this? Like,
well, what were your big takeaways, or what do you want to talk about?
I think one of my takeaways is it's good to have like new language around this stuff, but a lot of the ideas don't come off as super new and novel to me. Like it's just. It feels like a different wording around agile concepts in a way. At least that's my perception of it.
Yeah, I can hear it in your voice, and I have the benefit of seeing you on video that listeners don't. But like even just from your notes, like my sense was, oh, Benedikt doesn't really doesn't see what the big deal is. Like your notes have this sprinkling of like, why is this such a big deal?
Yeah,
is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get why it works and why it's a good concept, but like it doesn't come off too revolutionary to me.
Okay. Because it's just to like summarize what you were saying, like it's basically agile with less acronyms, less dogma, and like slightly different structure.
I guess it's agile, but it's not Scrum. I feel like a lot of people confuse like agile development with like super strict processes like Scrum, and even that is probably a mistake. Like I hear a lot of people hating about agile development and like processes like Scrum, and when I talk to them, it sounds like it's actually horrible because it's like dictated from the top, and you don't get the autonomy that is in a way a core concept of this whole agile approach. And I feel like a lot of the things that I mentioned in Shape Up have similar concepts in agile development processes like Scrum, but because like they get a little bit abused these days and everyone's forced into these processes, people start to hate it because they get the autonomy they should have.
Okay. All right. And so specifically from your notes here, you're basically saying, shaping, that's writing user stories. Nothing new there. The team defines the tasks.
In a way.
That's a better way to do it anyway. Shape Up talks about 6-week sprints. Agile usually has 2-week sprints. Like, is this what you're... So...
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, agile in itself doesn't define how long a sprint is. Like, that's just 2-week sprints is just like something you decide that you do 2-week sprints.
Why then, I mean, educate me. So then why then is that such a standard if it hasn't been defined itself?
I guess it's a good balance when you're just doing development that's very predictable. Like when you're familiar with the concepts and the ideas and like what you're going to build, then 2 weeks isn't a bad cycle. Like because you don't do a lot of research and there's not that many unknowns. Usually you can do that in 2 weeks. And even Shape Up mentions it. I forgot what they name it, but like the small batches, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
They mentioned like
small batch
breaking things like in 1 to 2 week cycles. And that's basically the thing. Like they happen to sometimes they apparently split those 6 weeks into 3 2-week chunks where it makes sense. And I guess, but as I said, in the end, it's up to the team to decide that. And the downside is it doesn't happen that often. Like a lot of people and I think that's one of the problems with Scrum and stuff. Like people follow it too much like religion, or like it's the rule. You have to do it this way, and don't see it as a collection of tools that you can use and apply to your own process to make things work. Right. And I feel like this shape up concept is similar. It's like a collection of processes, and you apply those how you work. And even the how to get started chapter in the book mentions that you just like pick one thing and start with 6-week cycles, and then you add another layer when you need it and stuff like that. So I feel like in a way it's super similar to the existing stuff. It's just with new words and maybe a bit more relaxed than
yeah. And I it's probably fair to say, fast forward 2 or 3 years, and if this really catches on, and that there will be as much, or even 10 years, but like as much dogma, additional definitions, that sort of thing attached around it. I think what draws me to it is that it does feel more relaxed. It feels like just enough more, like it feels human sized as opposed to, enterprise and organization sized approach to how to think about, design, and build a thing. It seems like people already are attaching a lot of specifics or like, this is how you should do it. It should be, you have one team over here that's doing 6 weeks of shaping, and they're going to hand it off to this team over here that's doing 6 weeks of building after this period of bedding. And Ryan Singer himself is like, yeah, no. I mean, feel free to do 1 week of shaping, 1 week of bedding or less, 2 weeks of building. Like that's not the point. The point is that there are some just universal truths about work, and this process has enough structure and is relaxed enough to hopefully allow your team to get through that a little bit.
Yeah, that's, and I totally like the idea of having like longer cycles, especially with new stuff where it's not as clean cut as with like implement this feature that you already implemented a dozen times before for another customer, or just make this small improvement. And what I also particularly like is that they have this concept of the hill charts, basically, with figuring out what you do and then doing the stuff.
Yeah,
that's something that usually gets overlooked in traditional processes. Especially they treat like the discovery period as work, where traditionally it's more like, why do you have to learn stuff? Like, why do you have to research stuff? Don't you just know it and can get started and get this done? And the shape up is acknowledging that figuring things out and experimenting and maybe even throwing things away is an important step in the process.
Yeah. The two concepts that I really like are the hill charts that you just that visual of how to go into something, to building something. The other is the circuit breaker that just, and so real quick summary for anyone who hasn't read it yet, but the circuit breaker says, if we have, established that we're going to give 2 weeks to this thing, or if we have established that we're going to give 6 weeks to this thing, to this project, that when we hit that time, the circuit breaker trips and we do not continue to give more time to it. Like, it's over. And so, and if it needs more time, well, then you need to write that pitch and bring it back to the betting table. And then we will decide if we're going to give it another 2 or 6 weeks. Those two concepts, the hill charts and the circuit breaker, I think are really, really great visuals. How's the circuit breaker idea strike you?
Yeah, I like that one as well. Again, similar to like agile concepts. If you don't finish the task within that sprint, then you have to replan it for the next one or not do it. Like it starts from fresh at every cycle. And I think it's an easy concept to like consider, but doing it for real is probably pretty hard. I feel like, and in the past I've seen teams would have cycles and sprints and see that a job isn't done by the end of the sprint, and then basically just keep going for the next iteration.
Yep. A couple more weeks.
That's probably the worst thing you can do, because like there's no guarantee that it will be finished within the next 2 weeks, and the deadline just vanishes, and there's a lot of good stuff that just comes from having a deadline. So I think it's a good idea, but yeah, you have to be disciplined to implement it.
Oh yeah, I mean, no doubt. Like, so yes, so much about the process. And I mean, for the record, like it's a really good match for me and for my approach. Like, this is how I would want to work on a team. So much of it, the underlying principle is everybody on the team needs to trust one another. There's got to be a high degree of trust here for this thing to work.
Yeah.
In every direction. And it felt to me anyway, like some of these things that they talk about, like just working. And there's no need to have a process in place for this component. There's no need to have a rigorous process in place for this component to work, because the team member just tracks it and, independently, and then brings it back to the table, down the road. That works really well when that person feels trusted, valued, etc. Yep. And so I feel like so much of the startup world, and just processes and definitions and best practices, etc., are all, many of them are in response to poor functioning teams with members that don't trust one another, trying to cover their ass and seek certainty where there will always be risk. And and so rather than trying to figure out how to learn that system and, get a certification in that like arena of things, it's just like, gosh, no, like that is just not the way I want to. That's not the way I want to work. I don't want to get good at that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's the core problem that that's the core problem that some people experience when they are working in like Scrum or something like that. It's not the process itself or the framework, but like trying to misuse it to control or work around the trust issue, stuff like that.
Well, so then are you what are you thinking, like for user list, if fast forward a little while and getting ready to start adding some team members or whatever, what sort of development process would you want to implement and bring into the team and say, this is how we're going to work?
I think a lot of that stuff really sounds interesting to implement. Well, the longer cycles is actually a good idea. I feel like maybe 6 weeks is too long, but 4 weeks might work. 2 weeks usually, can work as well, but is tough. Like, it's a tough schedule, especially with all this stuff. Like, what I really, really like is the shaping process and stuff like doing those breadboard charts where you just write down words to represent hierarchies in the UI and stuff like that. The fat marker sketches are super useful, I think, because it's easy to fall into the trap of like over specifying before and then like pitching those ideas and deliberately betting on something and then handing that off to a team.
Yes,
I think that part of the framework is really useful, and it's easy enough to start. Like, I feel like there's nothing that you don't really need a special skill to make a sketch with a fat marker, and you don't really need a special to write down some notes that describe what you're planning with words and follow this. I think at some point I had this the structure for the pitches of why is this a problem and why do we think the solution works, and maybe even like possible problems that might be involved in that. I think those are useful because it feels more approachable than like a big book on how to write user stories. Well, I think essentially it's the same idea, but like it's a more relaxed and loose process, I think. At least that's what it feels.
Yeah. I just think it's totally worth saying and acknowledging that the culture of the leadership and just the culture of the personality type of the people building the thing is so important. And it's not that shape up is right and other things are wrong, or that those things are right and shape up is wrong, so much as, yes, I mean, people are into different styles of music. People are into different styles of running a company, and are going to prefer, an extreme bias towards like operationalizing, systematizing things. And that's totally fine. It just also means that the approach in this book is probably not gonna like completely jive, or that something in between.
Yeah.
Anyway, you have a note in here. Uninterrupted comes up a couple of times. That sounds wonderful. Smiley face emoji.
Yes, especially in the building part. There's this idea of like handing the shaped project to the team, and then the team works for 6 weeks
and then leaving them alone. Yeah,
that sounds so nice.
Would be lovely. Yeah. No, it's definitely important to note, and I think this is one of the things that I really like about doing this with you, is that we're in the same position of, we do not get to focus on anything full time. Like, we don't get to focus on building our consulting business into like a fine-tuned machine full time. We don't get to focus on building our project. I hate even calling it a side project, because it's like it's the thing, but it is the side project for now. Don't get to focus on that full time. There is no such thing as uninterrupted time right now.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is, like, you interviewed Ryan for your podcast, and I think as a result of that, they made this appendix to the book, like how to get started with a small team. And what I find interesting, maybe not, maybe it's not even that surprising, but they're acknowledging exactly that like when you're just a team of 2 or 3, there's no such thing as focused, uninterrupted time. You're constantly handling a couple of things at the same time. But I think, still some of the ideas might still, for example, the cycles and the circuit breaker, to get started with something.
Yeah. They, he added a chapter called Small Enough to Wing It, after our conversation. And I only noticed this the other day, that there's a link to Bright and Early, like in the introduction of the thing, that like made my head fall off of my shoulders when I saw that. Ran my laptop over to my wife and was like, Laura, I can quit the show. It is done. No, that honestly, like, we're joking, but that was honestly that was a pretty validating and cool thing.
We should probably also link to the interview in the show notes.
Yeah, we should. It was a really enjoyable interview. Sorry, what were you saying?
It was. What I was surprised about, I'm not actually sure when this happened, but there used to be a section called Summary of the Methodology.
Okay.
And I have a feeling that that new chapter replaced that. Like, I downloaded a PDF like before my vacation, and I think that was before that new chapter went in there, and it had this like, I don't know, 5 to 6 pages, just a bare minimum summary of the entire process, and looks like that's gone. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is a bit sad.
Oh yeah, summary of the method.
That was like the
you're totally
a good reminder
right.
to just like print out and hang on the wall and just refer back to.
Well, and I guess there's got to be something about that, like the summary of the method that people were taking as being prescriptive, and this is how it is done, and how, as opposed to like descriptive. Here's how we have implemented. And anyway, I think it's just important to just keep it in mind. This is a good framework, but adjust it for your team. Let's see.
Yeah, being dogmatic about this type of thing is unhealthy. I think that's one of the universal truth about project management and building stuff.
Yeah. And life in general, I think, like, becoming increasingly aware. It's so. Anyway, all right, what do you got for the week ahead?
Well, MicroConf Europe for the most part.
Yep. Okay.
And until then, doing some more work on the refactoring. This weekend I took the time to actually finish decorating the office, and that also means that my whiteboard is back on the wall. So On the opposite wall, there's now a big whiteboard with a lot of notes about the refactoring.
Yes. Does that feel like a mental load off that you can now have a representation of your brain on the wall?
Yes, that helped a lot. It turned out to be so many moving parts that having them on the wall there and just being able to watch it is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well,
what are your plans other than having a vacation?
Right. So the thing, it was good to have this conversation because I'm feeling like it's extremely important for me to do before I leave is to provide an outline and a description of the handful of things that I feel like need to be done in order to make the prototype demoable, installable, and ready to show it to a handful of people. So that feels really important for me to get done. And I think that'll pretty much, that's at the top of my list. Besides just like I've got some consulting stuff that I need to be sure that I wrap up today and get the other podcasts scheduled and ready to go. Yeah. But yeah, that's that, man.
Cool. Well, then I guess that's it for this week, right?
Okay. I think that should do it. Show notes at slowandsteadypodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at slowsteadypod. Anything else, Benedikt?
Don't be confused if the next episode is a day or two late.
Oh, yeah. Yes, in fact, maybe plan for that, my friends. All right. Good talking. Okay, see you later.
Bye.